Hello everyone, welcome back to the Plunder Den. In this week's episode, we're going to build and paint a wigwam. So a wigwam is a North American native house or structure. With the release of Fire on the Frontier, I didn't really have a lot of structures for my native forces. I had some stuff for the European forces. We would spend all that time building all those fortifications, and we did build that the forest scene with the river going through it, but nothing really for housing or structures for my native factions. So definitely this would be the first in a series of videos I would like to do on these kind of structures. So I want to do a longhouse and maybe even some fortification walls that they would have had in a native village. But I figured I'd start with something a little bit smaller with this wigwam. And use this as a proof of concept for building larger structures. I really got the idea from Joseph from Blood and Pigment. He suggested that I build some of these structures, and that's a really good idea. I needed to flush out some stuff here for my native factions, and this is a good place to start. So let's take a look at the finished product here. So this is what we're going to build and paint in today's episode. So you know me, I like to base my terrain here. So this is the actual structure itself. And it's not attached to this, it's loose, and I'll pull it off here in a minute. But I also built some scatter terrain for this piece and a base to put it on. It's just a lot easier if it's all glued on here and you can just move the whole structure. I'm hoping to build a few of these and then build a longhouse and a fortification wall for it. So let's take a look at the inside. So I built some doors on here. Let's pull this off here. So this is a separated. So even if I wanted to use just this and move it onto another piece of terrain, I didn't want to glue it down. So we're also going to do the inside as well, the interior. And I built this kind of like a little bed here, just kind of some stuff for the inside of this piece here. All right, so that's what we're going to build in today's episode. If you guys like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information on when I start these kind of projects. All right, everyone, let's get down to the table and let's start painting and let's start crafting. Okay, I started off with some dollar store foam board here. I just kind of traced out a little base that I wanted to build it on. I used that tape to kind of measure what size the wigwam's going to be. Then I found this craft wire string. Actually, my wife did. We were in the dollar store and I was looking for some kind of material to build the outside of it. And this seemed like it would work for this project. So I just showed you that insulation foam because I plan on making similar to the blacksmith build shingles out of those. And it's just going to be bark for the outside of the wigwam. So here is the wire. You can see it's pretty good. It actually keeps its shape really well, which is perfect for this project. And it's kind of like a string, so it has kind of like a pattern on the outside of it, so it's not... it could look like something else, and when after I painted it, it really worked out well with that texture that's on it. So I'm just showing you different stages of me. I'm building the outer framework. It looks like a kid's school ground, playground equipment right now. But I'm just measuring it with my minis like I always do. I just kind of measure out the size of it through my miniatures to make sure it's the right size. So I'm just kind of showing you I'm going to tie more. I'm just making more of a web. So then I moved to putting a frame on the doorway. So I kind of just used some matchsticks and a little bit of balsa wood there. And just kind of glued it on with some white glue. And really, it's just a rough shape. As I added more things, you can still bend this wire, right? So you can just keep bending it to keep shaping it. So there's that insulation foam. I'm not going to show you, I've showed you in previous videos, but I just used that little brush there to create the wood texture on it. In a wigwam, they usually use like bark on the outside of a tree and stuff, so I wanted to kind of capture that. I just had chunks of this insulation foam to kind of represent that bark. So I'm just showing you, I'm going to use that white tacky glue, and I'm going to glue that on the inside. So I kind of went around the base first, and you can see I kind of got them at an angle. I just kind of fit it in that way. Just more of an aesthetic look than anything else. But and then I plan on moving up to the next level. That was a little trickier because you want to overlap with the ones below, and it looked like it's a little harder with that framework. So then I showed you I did the inside as well, and actually most of those I added a few extra shingles just to hold cover some of the holes that I created by putting it on the outside. You can see there's some a little bit smaller chunks, but I do plan on putting some kind of like sheets or blankets or something over top, like animal skin they would have put on top of the wigwam. So then I had to frame the inside. And all I really did was made 2 circle loops, and I kind of just glued in other pieces that I just snipped to make a framework on the inside. So then I start working on the base. And really here I'm just kind of making like a little fire pit. They would have had a fire pit in the middle of it where they did their cooking or keep them warm. And I just used some leftover bricks that I had from previous projects. I'd say I'm contemplating just making big bats of bricks and have them on hand. So that was just kind of like something where that they, cut their food or whatever on like a chopping block kind of thing. So just showing you I finished that web. I did mention that that dowel on the top, that just a decoration. Looking at pictures of other wigwams, I noticed that they had that on there. I should really look into the historical significance of that. I'm not sure if that's just a decorative thing or what exactly that's for. But I noticed that a lot of them had that on the top of it. So I just used a couple of egg carton. I also have some of this just pre-cut out. Those are beads that look like pots. Just adding some details inside. There's some matchsticks. And I made some doorways. So they just have sliding doorways. They just pull a door over top in the wintertime. It's not really, they don't have hinges. It wasn't connected that way. They just pulled it across when it's cold. So then I wanted to put like a fur that's drying out on that little stand that I was building there out of those matchsticks. So I just used a marker. That's some teddy bear fur that I got from the craft store. And I just cut it so it's not so long, just to make it the fur a little bit shorter. And I also made a little bed down there. You can see those little, right there, that's that bed I created. These are just scatter terrain, just to add more details to this overall piece. So I got the little stand. It's still drying. As you can see, I got some white glue on there, and it's kind of sagging. But once it was dry, I ended up gluing that little, like it's like a little bear that I made fur onto there. That I'm going to plan on putting on the outside of this structure as some scatter terrain. And there's the same thing I was doing with the bed. I put a little bit of fur on top. Now, when I put the craft paint on top of it, it won't be as puffy as the fur. It'll lower it down a little bit, and we'll do some dry brushing on there to give it so you can highlight some of the fur texture there. So there, I've glued it onto the stand there. Just showing you that what I've done there. There, I've glued it onto the little bed. That's going to be inside the wigwam. And then there's my doors. I put like little handle kind of things on there just to make it look like you got something to hold on it. So this is that material. This is the same stuff I use for putting sails on my ships. I got it at Walmart. It's just it's just some plain fabric from Fabric Creations. And it's just a plain color, and that way you can, once you put the craft paint on it, paint it on the wigwam first, and then you paint it on top, and it'll actually stick to it like glue. You don't really need to put PVA glue in there. You could if you wanted to make it a little extra strength, but I just painted it on. So then I moved to my old friend, the old drywall compound. I've been using this tub for quite some time. It might be almost time for a new one. But anyways, same as all the other projects, I just put it on there. It goes on pink, and then it dries white, right? So then it's completely dry. So really I'm just adding some kind of texture to the ground, so it doesn't look plain like a board. Now the thing to note about this is once you put this drywall compound on the top, it'll start warping the dollar store foam board. Now you could just do this on a piece of MDF and you wouldn't have to worry about warping. But to counteract that, it's a lot cheaper and easier to just use dollar store foam board. You just paint the back with craft paint. It'll counteract the warping, and it'll come out completely straight. So as the drywall compound here is drying, just paint the other side with black craft paint, and then I usually just suspend it on 2 pieces of foam or something, and it dries, and it dries nice and straight. So I figured I'd show you how I put on that cloth there, material, and kind of just want to make like animal skins or something on the top of this wigwam. So that's just the black craft paint that I always use from Folk Art, multi-surface. And really I painted first where I'm going to stick the cloth. Just kind of cover the spot and really just kind of adhere it, help it adhere to the top of it, right? So you're putting that in first. So we're just going to take a moment here. I just wanted to show this. I know some steps I just skip by and just talk about it, but I really wanted to kind of show you what I was doing here. So then I grabbed that piece of material there. And I kind of just stick it on where I was painting. And that'll help it adhere properly. So I just paint over top of it here. And it'll bind, it'll stick to the paint below, and then of course you're putting a nice big heavy coat on top of it. Once it dries, it will, well, of course craft paint shrinks, so it puts it nice and tight, so it looks like it's animal skin that's just been kind of stretched on top of it or something. So I really liked using this kind of material. Like I mentioned, I use it for sails on all my ships. And that's how I get it to look like it's billowed, or what is like it's air is caught the sails, because once you have that craft paint on there, it hardens. But you have to paint it on top of some kind of shape, right? And to create the shape in the material. All right, so this is after I've done all that. So I've just moved on to just painting everything and completing the first coat, undercoat of my paint job, which is the Folk Art black craft paint. I did a little bit of the scatter terrain. I painted the wigwam itself. It's all covered. And you can see that material came out great on top. And now I got to address the base with some black craft paint here. So at this point, I would have painted the bottom already. And you can see the top is white. It's dry. And now I got to paint the top. Here, I'm just going to show you. Yeah, so that's what I did. I painted that bottom. That's what counteracted the warping of the drywall compound. Now, if you don't want to worry about that, just use a piece of MDF if you want. I just don't like going to the garage and, to be honest, using power tools to cut out a piece. I just like using a blade. Really, you can do this crafting just on your kitchen table. So those are the standard undertones, the real brown, bark brown, Pueblo, and camel. Those are the colors I use for my undertone on everything. I use that same brush that I always use, and I'm just showing you that I plan on dry brushing everything. So this is after I've added everything. Now the camel I only added to the stonework. As you can see, it's a little bit lighter. I did add a little bit on some of the areas, like on the wigwam where the outer frame was. There's usually a lighter wood, and some of the bindings. It's kind of just a rolled up piece of fur that I made of some scattered terrain. Added a little bit weathering to the door. But everything else has those undertones of the other 3 colors. And as you can see, I dry brushed a little bit of that fur with the camel too. So it just really highlights the tips of the fur, right? And I kind of dry brush the top of that. It kind of emphasizes the material, like you can see where it's stretched over the supports. And then I attacked the base there. Did the eggshell carton stones there, and the insulation foam bricks. So now I'm going to move on to the aging of the wood. It's Necromancer Cloak, dark stone. We got ash gray. We got just a plain white. And I got a matte black. And this is a Morphang brown. Like to use this as highlighting some of the wood colors. So I'm just showing you I'm planning on hitting all the wood areas of this piece with those colors. Alright, so this is, I want to stop in the middle of it. Normally I would have just skipped by it because I've shown this aging of the wood before. But I wanted to stop where I'm adding white right now. And just using that flat brush. And I'm kind of just adding stippling or just kind of putting little dots on there. When you look at aged wood and stuff like that, it has stuff growing on it. It can be white, green, whatever you want to put on there. But I like to add a little bit of white highlights. And I also drag that brush across and just kind of highlight some of those ridges in the bark that I've created. It really gives it a good illusion of it being bark. So I'm just showing you I plan on touching all those wood areas with that white. And I did dry brush that fur too as well with the white, just to kind of emphasize. So I'm going to show you that in a minute here. Same flat brush. I didn't move to my dry brush. There's just very little bit of paint on this brush. You can see it's one of my ratty brushes, whatever. It's good for what I'm trying to do it with. And I'm just trying to get the tips of the fur here. So that's looking a little bit better. You can see I'm just starting to highlight that. It just more emphasizes that it's a fur and not just a brown blob that's on here. I wanted to highlight the tips of it. So I did that same with the bed here. The fur blanket that's sitting on top of the bed. And that little satchel or little rolled up piece of fur. So this is after I've added all those highlights. I did some on the inside as well. And just kind of showing you the overall piece here. This is after I've completed all the fur. Just wanted to give you an overall look at all the pieces after I've finished painting them. Alright, so now I'm going to go address the stone again. And we're going to go to the desert yellow, skeleton bone, necrotic flesh, and the mummy robe. Now, you could use that craft paint combination that I did in the last video instead of going to these miniature paints. Like I said, I want to do one with aged wood as well and have a formula for that for craft paint too as well. So that way that either way you could use the craft paint to do the whole project and not move to some of these miniature paints that are a little more expensive. So I'm just showing you that I added those colors all to the stone. So now I'm going to add a little plant life on there. Commando green, army green. I'm going to add this sterling mud I used in that water feature that I did. I'm going to add that little bit of mud around the bottom of this thing. And add some, I always add a little bit of matte black in places just to highlight certain areas and make it a little darker, grungy. Just put a very little on your brush. So I'm just showing you some of the areas that I plan on hitting. Just kind of the bases and stuff and adding some plant life to things. So then I moved to this basilisk brown, pure red, and the contrast paint skeleton horde. So really I'm just doing the finer details now. So the yellow and the red, I just kind of want to make some stripes on some of the, like it's kind of like sheets or something on the wall on the inside. Making it look a little more decorative. Just adding a little bit more to it. So I'm just going to open it up and take a look at it. This is after I finished everything. The yellow I added to the pots. You can see I just added some stripes in there just to make it look like blankets or something that's on the wall on the inside. Yeah, just looking at historical pictures as they had a lot of that. So, so then I'm moving on to the terrain part of it. Just adding assorted flockings that I have from Army Painter. These are some tufts also. Some of my favorite ones there. There's woodland, jungle, swamp, and then that meadow flower I really like. And just some bushes I had left over, and some trees that I got from Michael's, the craft store there in Canada. So just kind of, and then the trees I put on hot glue. I'm kind of impatient. I normally would use white glue, but I wanted to get it done right away, so I just hot glued them on there. And then I just use white tacky glue for all the rest of things, and this ratty brush. So I just really just whiteboard the glue where I want to put it and just dump on whatever I want to. Usually start with the brown battleground and then work my way through the flockings and tufts. Alright, so let's take a final look through the battlefield. Here we got our English militia attacking the beginnings of a native village here. There's that chevaux de frise that I built in previous episodes. Makes for a great spike wall for any kind of battlefield. And let's take a closer look at this wigwam. So there's that fur we got drying out on the outside of the building here. We got a rolled up bushel of it, or a little bundle of it. And let's take a look inside. So we got King Philip here inside his hut, or his wigwam. And there's the interior. Just wanted to show you all the aspects all completed. I did add some flocking also to, and over top of the green paint that's on the bottom there. I just wanted to mention that as well. Alright, so if you guys like what we're doing here in the Plunder Den, make sure you smash that like button and consider subscribing to the Plunder Den and get first-hand information when I start these kind of projects. Alright everyone, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.